Have you ever loved a character so much that you just could unimagine anyone else taking their place? What if your favorite hero was suddenly replaced, not by a villain, but by a completely new, untested successor? Well, this exact scenario played out in the world of comics, and it led to one of the most infamous fan backlashes in history. Today, we're diving into the story of the first time readers outright rejected a new hero, a tale of high hopes, creative gambles, and a fanbase that simply wouldn't budge. This isn't just a piece of comic book trivia, it's a fascinating look at the powerful bond between creators, characters, and their audience. So grab your popcorn, because this story has all the drama of a blockbuster movie. Let's set the stage. The year is 1993. Comic books are booming, and DC Comics is at the top of its game. They had just pulled off one of the biggest stunts in publishing history, the death of Superman. It was a massive event that crossed over into mainstream news. People who had never picked up a comic book in their lives were suddenly lining up to see how the Man of Steel would meet his end. It was a commercial triumph, and it got the creative minds at DC thinking, if it worked for Superman, could it work for Batman? Enter the Nightfall saga. The plan was ambitious and dark. Batman, the ever-prepared, seemingly invincible Dark Knight, was going to be pushed to his absolute limit. A new, brilliant villain named Bane would orchestrate a mass breakout from Arkham Asylum, forcing a weary and exhausted Bruce Wayne to face his entire rogues gallery one by one. It was a grueling gauntlet designed to wear him down physically and mentally. The climax of this storyline was as shocking as it was iconic. Bane confronts a depleted Batman in the Batcave, and in a brutal display of power, breaks his back over his knee. Bruce Wayne, the Batman we all knew and loved, was paralyzed. Gotham was left without its protector. This was a massive turning point. The city needed a Batman, but Bruce was out of commission. So, who would take up the cowl? The choice fell to a man named Jean-Paul Valley, also known as Azrael. Azrael was a relatively new character, a genetically engineered assassin for a secret religious order. He was trained, he was skilled, but he was also mentally unstable. He was programmed with a system of deep psychological conditioning known as the System, which could turn him into a brutally efficient fighting machine. Bruce, in his desperation, saw potential in Jean-Paul and asked him to become the new Batman. And this is where things started to go wrong, at least in the eyes of the fans. Jean-Paul Valley was not Bruce Wayne. His version of Batman was different. He started by creating a new, high-tech, and frankly, over-the-top batsuit. It was all sharp edges, blades, shurikens, and flamethrowers. It looked more like something out of a sci-fi horror movie than the classic silhouette of the Dark Knight. It was a visual representation of how different this new Batman was going to be. The changes weren't just cosmetic. Jean-Paul's methods were far more violent and reckless. Where Bruce Wayne was a master detective who used fear and precision, Azrael Batman was a blunt instrument. He was brutal, he was lethal, and he completely lacked the moral compass that defined Bruce Wayne. He let a villain fall to his death, something Bruce would never do. He isolated himself from Robin, Alfred, and Commissioner Gordon, the very support system that kept Bruce grounded. This new Batman was a loner, driven by his violent programming rather than a sense of justice. He was, in essence, an anti-Batman. The writer's intention was clear. They wanted to show readers exactly why Bruce Wayne was the one and only true Batman. They wanted to deconstruct the character by presenting a dark, twisted version of him, making the audience appreciate Bruce's unique code of ethics even more. The plan was always for Bruce to heal and eventually reclaim his mantle. It was supposed to be a hero's journey, demonstrating that being Batman was about more than just a costume and physical strength. It was about the man underneath. But the fans didn't see it that way. They didn't see a clever narrative experiment. They saw their hero being replaced by a violent, unlikable imposter, and they hated it. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Letters poured into DC Comics headquarters. Early internet forums and comic shop discussions were filled with rage. Readers felt betrayed. They had invested years, sometimes decades, into the character of Bruce Wayne. They loved his complexity, his unwavering moral code, and his humanity. Jean-Paul Valley had none of that. He was a caricature, a hyper-violent 90s anti-hero wearing their favorite character's symbol. The sales, which were initially strong due to the hype of a new Batman, started to reflect this dissatisfaction. While the initial Nightfall issues sold well, the books featuring a Spatas, as he was derisively called, saw a noticeable dip. Readers were voting with their wallets. They didn't want this Batman. They wanted their Batman back. This wasn't like the Superman event, where 4 new potential Supermen emerged, each embodying a different aspect of his legacy. This was a hostile takeover. The pressure mounted on DC Comics. The creative team had underestimated the deep emotional connection fans had with Bruce Wayne. They thought they were telling a story about Batman, but to the readers it felt like a story that was disrespecting him. The experiment, while creatively interesting, was a commercial and public relations problem. The message from the audience was loud and clear. End this now. Bring Bruce back. And so DC accelerated the timeline. Bruce Wayne, through a miraculous recovery involving psychic healing and sheer willpower, got back on his feet. But he couldn't just walk back in and take the cowl. He had to earn it. He had to retrain his broken body, guided by the formidable Lady Shiva, one of the world's greatest martial artists. This led to the ultimate showdown in the Night's End storyline. The final battle between Bruce Wayne and Jean-Paul Valley in the Batcave was epic. It wasn't just a physical fight. It was a battle for the soul of Batman. Bruce didn't overpower Jean-Paul with brute force. Instead, he used his intellect, his knowledge of the cave, and his understanding of psychology. He outsmarted Asbats, forcing him into a narrow tunnel where his bulky, weaponized suit became a trap. Defeated and humbled, Jean-Paul Valley relinquished the mantle. Bruce Wayne was Batman once more. The return of Bruce Wayne was met with widespread relief and celebration from the fans. Sales shot back up. The crisis was over. The Nightfall saga, in its entirety, is now looked back on as a classic, but at the time, the middle part of it was a public relations nightmare. It became the ultimate cautionary tale for comic book publishers. It proved that you can't just replace an iconic hero and expect the fans to go along with it, no matter how clever your story is. The legacy of this event is profound. It established a precedent. Fans learned that their voices, when united, could influence the direction of these fictional universes. And creators learned that the bond between a reader and a beloved character is something to be handled with immense care. It wasn't the last time a publisher would try to pass the torch to a new character, but every subsequent attempt was made with the memory of the Asbats backlash in mind. The rejection of Jean-Paul Valley as Batman was a defining moment. The first major instance where the collective will of the readership forced a creative course correction, proving that in the world of heroes, the fans have the final say. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Was the Nightfall saga a brilliant story or a huge mistake? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into comic book history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos. See you next time.